And away we go. 6 o'clock. Yeah, first of all, thanks for coming tonight. And second of all, thanks for all you do and all the times that we don't see you coming and going. What a valuable group of people we have here. Thanks for all you do for our students. So to kick off our in-service and give you some nuggets that you can take home with you. And our goal tonight is if you can take something, whether it's going to be safety and security, Teresa and Sam are going to kick the show off here, or if there's something you can do in the classroom, what we try to do is give you some meats and potatoes, some nuts and bolts, some ideas that you can really take with you into the classroom, outside of the classroom as you work with students. So once again, thanks for coming. Without further ado, first, Teresa and Sam, come on up.
Sam and I were talking, we forgot our nuts and bolts, we forgot our nuggets and our meat and potatoes, so hopefully we'll give you something that you can take with it. So let's get this. All right, I'm Teresa Webster. I'm Dean of Students and Assistant Campus Director here on the Lincoln campus. This is Sam Lose. He's our Safety and Security Specialist on the Lincoln campus. I don't know if everyone's from Lincoln campus or we're from all the campuses, but each campus has a Dean of Students / Assistant Campus Director and a Safety and Security Specialist. So there's a Sam or I on each campus who can answer any of these fabulous questions and provide this information that we're going to go over tonight. So some of our objectives are really just to kind of review expectations for behavior, our SEC Student Code of Conduct, because any sort of misbehavior issue in the classroom, to frame it within the lens of our Student Code of Conduct is important, because this is the language we give to any new student during new student orientation regarding what the behavioral expectations are, and then what's going to happen if they're not meeting the expectations. So if we're all using the same language, we think that's pretty important. Also some just basic communication kind of tips and tricks. If there are issues in the classroom, if students aren't meeting expectations, how can we respond in a way to hopefully kind of nip the problem in the bud, but also if students start to escalate, what are some kind of techniques to help de-escalate situations like that. Also just kind of self-care. We'll get into it a little bit, but half of the battle is being knowledgeable about yourself and where you're at, physically, emotionally, because if we're not regulated and we're not healthy, it's hard to keep our students regulated and healthy as well. Then if there are issues, what next? So I have an issue with a student, what do I do now? Who do I tell? How do I let them know? And then Sam will talk a little bit about how we report incidents, and then some of our newer lockdown magnets, which are pretty exciting, so he's going to talk about that. Our Student Code of Conduct, we have the basic kind of premises up here. Specific behaviors are in each of those, so if you go to the website, it's in the Student Affairs tab on the website, and drill into the Student Code of Conduct, you can actually drill into each of these expectations and find examples of behavior that would be included in each of those tenets. We tell students very clearly this is not an all-exhaustive list, because we know sometimes students are creative in their misbehavior. So these are just examples. Here's some examples of what may be included, but it also gives us some, wiggle room when they are creative in what they're doing or failing to do. But honesty and integrity, primarily that's the academic dishonesty, plagiarism, accountability and respect for others. This is where disruptive behaviors fall into. When we get tips reports, the issues we deal with students, the majority are in this disruptive behavior. This is a spectrum from some kind of, fairly minor kind of offenses that maybe are more annoying or irritating, like they're on their phone all during class, or they're sleeping, or they're coming in late, to more extreme disruptive behaviors where they're yelling, they're blurting out, they're loud, they're aggressive, they're making threats either explicit or covert. So that's the vast majority of the issues that we had reported by staff and faculty. Kindness and compassion and principles of diversity. This is really where all the Title IX and harassment and discrimination behaviors fall in. And so, treating each other with respect, dignity, not being aggressive or abusive or threatening, bullying, that falls in there. And then acting in a manner that fulfills their personal and academic responsibilities. At new student orientation, I'm clear with students, if they can follow that one, all the rest should come, just naturally into play. Because if they're asking themselves each time before they do something, is this going to help me achieve my goal of graduating or completing this class? If it's a no, then they probably don't want to act in that manner. And so all of previous four really come by in that fifth one. On the website are examples, like I said, but also our student code of conduct as a whole. About 2 years ago, we went from about a page of the student code of conduct, and we lovingly referred to it as our commandments. It was like a list of thou shalt nots, to really develop a student code of conduct that really was developmental in nature, that meets students where they are, taking into account of all the diverse experiences that our students are coming to us with, and also the mentality that students are violating the student code of conduct. What we really want to do is help them learn from that, if the infraction is such that we can do that. There are obviously infractions that create big, safety concerns, where we have to go a little different route, but for the vast majority, we can engage students in a conversation about, all right, what led up to this behavior, what are you going to do different, and how are we going to make it right so you can be successful. And that's really how our student code of conduct at SCC has kind of morphed and grown over the last couple of years. So it went from a page to about a 24-page kind of manual. So I encourage everyone to check it out, just so you kind of know the language, how we word things, our philosophy with regards to student conduct, our learning outcomes that are related to student conduct. So again, if you're having those conversations with students, we can all be speaking a similar language. I come to de-escalation or interactions with students from a brain-based kind of philosophy. My background is in mental health, and so working with kiddos in foster care and group homes, where they did have a lot of behaviors, and there was escalation, and we were involved in de-escalation fairly frequently. And what I know is that when the brain isn't regulated, when the brain isn't feeling safe, it does all kinds of really messy things, and it comes out in behavior. And physiologically, we can help students stay calm. We can have more success in our interventions. One of the things that I like is, helping students stay in their sweet spot. Some of these we will have no control over. We can't control if students are sleeping well, if they're, staying hydrated, if they're eating well, if they're exercising and keeping their, themselves physically healthy. But we can impact this time. And time includes making sure students have enough notice for when things are going to be due, helping students plan out, because we know for some of our students those surprise or unexpected kind of changes or quick deadlines really can throw them off and really cause a lot of anxiety. So the one thing that instructors can do is really being very clear. Here's when my deadlines are, and if things change, making sure we're giving adequate time and notice so that students can adjust. If things do change, then engaging students in the discussion of how are we going to change this and how are we going to adjust so that you can be successful. And then it's kind of just talking to students just about wellness overall. In new student orientation, this is a piece of it. And we talk to students about our student affairs services, from CAPS, so from our counseling, from our wellness activities, from our disability services, to really help these services that help students stay well. And so really focusing on all those pieces of wellness. So we're framing those conversations with students from the beginning. And so hopefully when they're in their classes, if they've attended new student orientation in person, this isn't going to be a foreign concept because they've heard us talk about what it is to be well and what it is to be whole and how to focus on all those pieces of our wellness. When we talk about how to engage a brain, we know that the brain develops from the back forward. This forward is our frontal cortex, our prefrontal cortex, which really is what gives rationale to our emotions. If we don't have it, we have all these big emotions for no reason, and we can't talk ourselves down or control ourselves. So all we're doing is feeling these really big emotions all the time, and there's no breaks. We also know that on average, and this is for an individual who hasn't really experienced any traumatic experiences in childhood, it takes about 25 years for the brain to fully form, to have these beautifully functioning prefrontal cortexes. So when we think about the students in our class, many are not 25. And so that planning, that putting rationale, that all those skills, they kind of come and go. It's not like they're absent, they just aren't engaged all the time. And so you'll see kind of fits and starts, and you're like, why would they do that? Or why didn't they do that? They know better than that. It could be that their prefrontal cortex is just, shorting out. Thank you. Shorting out. And so when we really want to speak to a brain, especially when we see students getting escalated, really the best thing you can do is to make sure you're calm. Mirror neurons are this: when I respond in a certain way, people will mimic unconsciously what emotion I'm projecting, and vice versa. So if a student is yelling and angry, my brain is telling me I should be angry and scared and threatened and match that emotion. When I do that, then they get more escalated, and then I get more escalated, and then we have these yucky blow-ups, and nothing ends well. If I, though, as the professional and as the mature individual with a fully functioning prefrontal cortex, can say, whoa, the student's getting a little escalated, and I can tell I'm starting to get escalated because I'm starting to breathe a little faster, I'm starting to sweat a little bit, I can feel my voice getting louder, I can feel it getting faster, a little higher pitched. Ooh, I probably need to just take it down a notch. And so when we really talk about how to intervene and how to respond to escalated students, really the magic is really maintaining your sense of calm. And so paying attention, knowing what it feels like for you personally, because when I get anxious, that looks different for me than maybe what it looks like for you. And so knowing what it feels like in my body when I start to get a little bit tense and a little bit nervous, and then really being cognizant and putting that effort forth to relax and to calm. Slowing down just everything is really helpful. In the moment, sometimes it feels like it's super slow, but I don't think you can be too slow with any of it because likely you're still a little escalated, so you're still probably going at a normal rate of speech and breathing. It may feel really slow, but that's probably okay. So we really want to slow everything down from our volume to our rate of speech to our breathing, and really start to bring down the level of intensity. Not taking it personally is huge. We know some students are really good at finding your hot button and pushing it a lot, right? We've all had that student and you're just like, dang, that was ouch, that really hurt, that was really mean, and we feel like we need to defend it, right? But I always tell myself when I'm starting to feel like that, I'm not that big of a deal, and the student doesn't know me really enough to want to hurt me. They're just really good at finding my buttons and getting me derailed. And so by not taking it personally, I don't attach any emotional feelings to anything they're saying. And when I don't have emotional feelings attached, then I can stay more calm and more relaxed. Expressing empathy is huge. We know that a lot of our students are coming to us from environments where they just really felt yuck, and they weren't given a whole lot of positive feedback. They're not getting given a lot of support. And if we can express that empathy and say, wow, I can tell this is really tough for you, that changes how their brain is listening and how their brain's responding to what's going on. So some things to say, and I can send this in an email, but really again, if you look, these are all really empathetic responses. They're pretty neutral in tone. Wow, that seems really frustrating. I wonder if someone else explaining it in a different way would help. So the student's really frustrated and they say things, you can't teach, you're the worst instructor I've ever had. We could say, you know what, I am a pretty good instructor, all my teacher evals say so. Or we could say, I've heard other students get really frustrated with this content and I know it's a little difficult. Maybe like a tutor could explain it a little different, because sometimes people explaining it differently can help. And so again, I'm taking the personal feelings out of it, and not getting defensive, and just giving some neutral solutions. Sometimes if things get intense, we just need a break. We need about 5 minutes to just kind of take a walk, and just to say, ooh, just to kind of calm down. So even just saying, ooh, that was a lot. Mind if we take a quick little break? I need to, get some water. So we're not saying, I need a break from you because you're really overwhelming me, but just saying, oh, that was a lot. Let's take a quick break. So then, again, we're permitting time to kind of reset ourselves as well as the student. So one other thing, sometimes students like to press and push for answers right now. You will give me this answer right now. And sometimes we just don't know all the answers all the time. And it's okay to say, that's a really interesting question. I've never been asked that before. Maybe can I think about it? I would really like to think about that because I really want to give you a really great answer. So again, we're staying really neutral in our response. We're not letting their pressure, guide our responses. So now we kind of know when the brain is stressed, again, it functions back here where we don't have rational thought and we don't have, a nice filter. So when we know the brain is under high stress, if we know now that responds by kind of attacking our really messy emotions, start thinking about things that maybe we could say that would increase that stress. They typically involve defensiveness, and when I've looked back in situations where I'm like, yeah, that wasn't my best, I probably could have responded differently to that. It's typically because I was feeling defensive for whatever reason. That's not what I said, because students will maybe twist sometimes. So what you're telling me is this, and you're like, that's not what I said. Get it right, that's not what I said. So again, if I'm starting to get defensive, I'm starting to get escalated. If you don't stop yelling, I'm going to kick you out. Or I'm going to call the police. Or I'm going to call security. Typically those, you can call security. You can kick students out. But know that is that's kind of the point of no return. So if we say that, then there's really no way to back out of that. We kind of have to do that. And typically then we're escalated. And so, wow. You're getting, this is getting really loud. Can we maybe take a break? Or if they yell, just let them yell and not respond to the yelling, which is really hard sometimes. But know that if we give kind of that ultimatum, that is going to tell their brain that, all right, it's go time. And now I really have to get my fight on. And so it kind of is that point of no return. For each other, because sometimes when I'm in an event where I'm starting to feel really tense or anxious or it's getting really intense, I don't always have the clearest read, so I think I'm totally calm, I'm speaking really chill, I got this. But Sam may hear things, and he's told me after, because he's the next door, he's like, I was ready to step in because you're getting a little loud. Dang it. But Sam knows that he should do that. If he hears me getting escalated, Sam knows he needs to say, hey, Teresa, can I talk to you for one quick second? And then he's going to pull me out, and he's going to say, you okay? And then I'm going to be like, I'm getting a little tense. So do that for each other, and make that agreement with your peers if you're sharing office space or even classroom space, or next door, to say, whoa, next door sounds like it's getting really intense. I'm going to go and say, hey, can you come here and talk to me for once? I have a quick question. It's pretty innocuous. It's not saying, do you need help? Because most of us say, no, I don't need help, I got this. But part of it too is just being willing, if someone says that, to say, okay, you're doing that because you care for me and you care for my classroom and you can hear something in me that I'm having trouble seeing clearly. And so helping each other out is also really important because while it's important to control ourselves at all times, there are times when it's harder for us to regulate ourselves. If I haven't eaten regularly, Sam knows I've got snacks all the time. If I'm not well fed and rested, I'm not as amazing as I sound right now. Just saying. And so it really is important that I'm monitoring myself as well to say, I'm not at 100% and this is going to be a little rough. I'm going to call in reinforcements. So self-care, making sure you yourself are sweet, making sure you have enough sleep, make sure you stay hydrated, well-fed, exercising, and just being healthy. Because physical health, if I'm feeling physically miserable, it's really hard for me to be positive and empathetic, right? And goal 9 in our banner words, if I'm feeling yuck inside. And so making sure you are well. If you Google wellness, there's a wellness wheel, but one concept I like and referring to it is the acronym SPIRE. If I can keep my eye on the SPIRE, that peak of my spiritual wellness, my physical wellness, my intellectual, relational, and emotional wellness, I can feel whole and I can feel like things are in place. And when I know that those pieces are in place, I know that I respond better to students. Know your triggers. We all have things that bug us. It is what it is, right? Loud food noises. You can point to me. I'm his trigger, probably. At some point he's going to tell you my office singing. But food noises, oh my goodness. Like mouth noises like chewing, it causes rage. I know that about myself. I separate myself away from it. I have noisy chewing children and I just am like, I gotta go. But we all have triggers, right? We all have things personally that just get us. What a student may say to Sam that gets him fired up. For me, I may be like, whatever, that doesn't bother me. And so knowing what your buttons are is really, really important. Because if we don't know what our triggers are, the next minute we know, we're like yelling and we're escalated and we're like, whoa, what the heck happened? And things are kind of out of control and things can escalate really quickly. So knowing what our triggers are is important, and again, not taking it personally. When to call for backup, for the majority of issues, you'll handle in class. It's proactive, saying to a student, you know what? When you're on your phone all the time, it's really distracting, and I have trouble concentrating. And so if you could stay off your phone, that would be really helpful. But also, I'm concerned that you're really not learning anything if you're on your phone. Let's kind of talk through that. Is this going to be a problem? If they're coming in late, say, when you come in late, it's rustling, you can tell other students are getting a little frustrated. So what can I do to help you, or what can you do to be on time? What's going on? So some of that is just being proactive, calling out and discussing the behaviors right when they happen before they escalate is probably half the battle. But also, there will be times when students give us really kind of no warning, like they go from 0 to 60 and you're just like, what the heck was that? And so there are times when you may not feel safe or you feel like, I need some help here because this is a little bit out of my pay grade or whatever, or my level of expertise. And you can absolutely call Sam, you can call me, knowing your program chairs, your deans, your associate deans, having those individuals available and knowing their numbers so that when you need to call in reinforcements, you can do that and feel comfortable doing that. But typically, anytime you feel unsafe, and Sam and I would really encourage you not to question that. If your gut is saying this doesn't feel okay, I don't feel okay, please let us know. Because we know what causes one person to feel unsafe is different than another. And we do not sit around, laughing at all the reports and like, can you believe they said that? Because that would be really rude. And we're really nice people. And so what we want is you to report and to let us know, because we need all the information. Did he point to me? This one really is rude. No. If there's any sort of physical threats, either verbal or direct threats, or kind of the, you better watch your back. So they're not like saying what specifically harm they're going to cause, but it is threatening. Anytime students are making threats, anytime any sort of threat is made, physical aggression, we want to know about that. But we also want to know when things maybe aren't where you're like, this is clearly a concern, 100% I get that, but we also want to know about those things that you're like, something just doesn't feel right. I'm not sure what it is, but I know it doesn't feel right. So we want to know that too, because part of tips that Sam will talk about is we see them all. And when tips reports come in, we're comparing them to see if that student has been referred before. And if they have, okay, let's start putting the pieces together and kind of see about intervention. But please don't ever hesitate to report. Don't ever hesitate to call for help if you need that.
So I really try to encourage Teresa to just keep talking and to feel free to take all the time, but she was insistent that I was going to have to do this. So you're out there and you've got Teresa's nuggets and you put them to use and you seem to be not making headway, or you seem to think that you still need help. So I want to talk to you a little about how you can do that. I really think TIPS is probably one of our best tools here that you guys can use. I guess I'd ask you, how many of you probably seen me for the first time? Right, quite a few. When you fill out one of the reports and submit it, it comes off to us instantaneously. As fast as our network can work, we receive it. I can promise you, Teresa and I are reading them pretty much all the time as soon as we get them, regardless of time of day. I do want to point out there, though, that it's not an 911 reporting site. If you have that emergency, please call 911. Get the help you need. We can get reports from you at a later time. It may not garner you an instant response from us. This thing doesn't like where I'm standing. But we do see it, we do read it, we are working on resolving it. Understand we keep them as confidential as we can. There's a lot of us that are TIPS administrators. As Teresa said, usually on every campus between the dean of students and the safety security staff, we do see every report. To that point though, not necessarily every TIPS administrator, not every person that receives a TIPS report receives every TIPS report. If there's not a need, we're not going to do that. I feel it's important to tell you that not only when you guys are reporting, but when you're helping students report, or you're trying to encourage students to report, they are kept in strict confidentiality. We're not going to have any more eyes on those than need to be. We're not going to involve any more people than we need to. You guys might have an academic dishonesty issue. Despite being your safety security staff for this campus, I don't see that. I don't need to. I don't need to deal with it. I don't need to know about it. I think it's to be her fun. So just that's one example that you may have a certain category, a certain report, and understand that there's not going to be any more people that see it than need to be. That said, we do offer the option to report anonymously. So again, as you're working with students, helping students, make sure they understand that. Sometimes that ties our hands and makes it hard for us to resolve those issues or look into those issues. But that option's still there if people are comfortable with that. We still rather get those reports and know about them. No report is too small. Any report could be the missing puzzle piece we need, as Teresa said, as we're trying to connect those dots. So if something's not feeling right, if something's making you question it, please send that report in. We're never going to chastise you. I'm never going to track you down and say, why'd you waste my time with this? Will never happen. I would rather get a report any day of the week that I feel like I didn't necessarily need than not get the one I do. We also have a lot of regulations that we stand by that we have to stay compliant with. The TIPS helps us with a lot, that if we don't know about this stuff, we can't accurately report it. If we can't accurately report it, SEC could face potential fines and other problems. So that it helps us in that area too. I do want to tell you guys, those of you that may not be familiar with it, if you're learning about TIPS for the first time, you can find it a couple different ways. On our main southeast.edu website, I'm sure that's hard to see up there. Bottom right hand corner, there's a little icon that says TIPS. If you click it, it'll open up the platform pretty easy. It's open dialogue, you can put in as much information as you need to, not a character limit or any of that kind of stuff. It doesn't Facebook or Twitter yet. Give us as much information as you need to, give us as much information as you can. It'll help us resolve the report, it'll help us know what's going on. It'll even allow you to add pictures, documents, emails, any of that if you need to. So if you got any of that, if you think it'll help us out, you can absolutely upload supporting documents. And that'll just help us as we work through our stuff. If you're on the hub, same little tips icon looks very similar. Kind of centers the page if you're familiar with the hub. Click it, open it up, fill out the report. Don't waste too much time worrying about the category. If you're not sure, select others, select safety security. If we don't like it, if we don't think it fits, if we think it belongs somewhere else, we have the power to do that. Teresa does that a lot. That's with me and change reports, and I get extra emails. So just please utilize tips as much as you can. Best way to get a hold of us. That being said, you can email me, call me, stop in my office anytime. We work that way too. Probably going to ask you to do that tips report though. So really is a great tool. And I'll talk to you a little bit about those fancy magnets we put on your door that we're probably going to pain for a while as we get used to them. The idea is here is we want to come up with a way that we could secure our classrooms quickly and efficiently. As we know, a lot of us, and most of us in this room, do not have a key or the ability to do that, and that was the idea behind these magnets. If we hit a lockdown type situation, if we hit a we need to stay secure, we need to stay safe, we need to keep people out type of situation, the idea is these magnets can do that. If you have not seen it, it looks very similar to a bookmark with a nice little tab sticking off of it. Yeah, go for it. Sits on the metal door frame over the metal strike plate, keeps the door from latching. Okay. The idea if your door swings outward and you have the disadvantage, you're going to have to open your door, pull it off real quick, shut your door. If your door swings into your classroom, you should be able to just pull that tab off without even having to open your door. That's why we put that there. Door should always be locked. I also encourage that the door be closed. Because again, it will speed things up if you do hit that lockdown situation. And then at the end, if you're needing to get a hold of us, that 437-2800 numbers, a main security number, no matter what campus, it'll give you the option to select the campus and it'll route you to the appropriate safety security specialist.
If you do have any situations and you just want to, process it or talk through it, I'm happy to kind of run through, different scenarios, I kind of dig that. I enjoy it. So if you are having struggles with a student and you want some, input on maybe some different ways to approach it, please don't hesitate to reach out. Sam and I are in H1 on this campus, and we're available to help.
One thing I would suggest that you do, if you haven't already, you'll notice in the back, the table there, standing by Terry's floor, is a future student. Denise has got our robot student set up, and the robots may be coming soon to your classroom. We got a rural technology grant, and so we have some of these little robots, of which a student could be at, let's say, a learning center, but they're connected to your class, and they will be able to get the robot here, and they'll be able to drive it to your classroom. And you'll be able to see the student. What you're seeing right now is Denise, but you'll be able to see the student, you'll be able to hear the student. And so it will take a little getting used to. As I shared, if you're doing interactive things in your classroom, obviously they can participate in some of those. The hands-on activity might be a limit.
But anyway, it's another opportunity for students at a distance to participate in some of our classes. We'll be experimenting with them over the next few quarters. I think we have 6 robots, is that right, Dave? 5? Okay. And I think most of them are here, 1 in Beatrice, 2 in Beatrice, Milford has 1. Okay. And so students will be able to check those out and use them. So, they told me last time in the spring I talked too long. And then you guys didn't want to hear all my boring stuff.
I didn't say that.
You didn't say
I
that?
didn't say that.
Okay. Anyway, so that's
Glenn said it.
Oh, Glenn said it. Okay. Anyway, just a couple quick things that I just wanted to share with you. First of all, how many of you have been to this website? The Q2S website, quarters to semesters. Okay, just a couple things I want to point out because it keeps evolving. One would be, Bruce, if you would click, Bruce is my assistant. What a beautiful assistant we have. Yes, calendar, please. If you go there, you'll find not only the current year's calendar, but if you go to 1920, this is the first semester calendar. So you can see August 26th is the first day of our semester in the fall. So when you're on the website and you're seeing the days counting down, that's the day it's pointed at, okay? You'll see the green are some in-service days, and what it will be doing as we switch to a semester and have more days, we will be having in-services for all of you, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So, how about Bruce go to advising? One of the things we've asked each of the programs to do is to put together some advising guides, because we have students that started last year that won't finish until we're on a semester, or they're starting this year. And so we want to provide them with a guide of how they'll be able to complete their program. This summer I had an opportunity to visit with most of our superintendents in the 46 schools that we work with. And one of the things that we assured them is that they have their students coming to us. We have plans for them. So Bruce is showing you computer information. They've done a great job in that they've put together plans for full-time and part-time students. So let's see, which one are we picking on, Bruce? Okay, so a student who started in the fall quarter of 17 a year ago, they'll be able to go to this page and they'll be able to see, hopefully, the plan that they did for each of the quarters last year, for each of the quarters this year, and as they keep going down, then they'll see the fall semester when they would actually complete the program. And so each of them will be like that if they started last year or this year, it'll show the quarters, then it'll forward right into the semester. So students are going to be able to graduate. Now, obviously, if a student doesn't stay on track, that may create a few little issues, but it gives them some guide how they can complete the program. Okay? What else should we tell them? Keep it a secret? If you go back to the page, student guide, there's a student guide there that gives students a lot of information. The other thing I would say on these, that I believe at the end, that we do have the web page for the program, and also there's a phone number, so if they want to call somebody at the program, they can do that as well. So, okay, so that's Q2S. Coming soon. Okay, now let's jump to PowerPoint. One of the things that we have some teams that are just starting some work, that what really dawned on me in this last year, we were looking at some online classes, and we were looking at how people had set them up and how they were doing them. And what it dawned on me is, we've really never said, what's our expectations of an instructor? Something that's common among, all of you in here are teaching an online class. What should I expect as a student? Would that be similar from one class to another? And that's probably even the same if it's a hybrid course. And so, what we've done is we've established a goal because our current evaluation system is old. And so we know we need to update that. So our goal is to establish a new system that really looks at technology, looks at quality of education, and training. And then how do we look at that so we can identify what should we be expecting of an instructor? How do we evaluate that? Because you may have a dean, a program chair, an associate dean coming in to observe your classroom. What should they be looking for? And how can we be consistent? And then lastly, how do we provide you opportunities to be trained so that not only do you know the expectations, but you're meeting those expectations. Next goal, please. So here's our timeline. You can see it's pretty aggressive. We've got the teams put together except for one. We hope to have most of their work done here shortly after the first of the year so we can start planning some of that professional development, get all the approvals that we need to, so that by the time we get to next fall and we have some of those in-service days, we can be providing that information to you. Excellent. Here's the teams, and some of them might look familiar to what you're doing tonight. So there is an engaged learning team, one that's dealing with online hybrid, LMS. You're going to hear about Canvas, and I know Canvas. Everybody has a shell, and some people use it minimally, at least that they have to. We want to know how do we robustly use that. So that's really the goal there. The fourth one is new faculty. We bring in a lot of faculty. We hire a lot of faculty that do not come with a teaching background. And so how do we work with those instructors over those first 3 years to make sure they feel comfortable in the classroom and they're doing things the right way? So that's that one. The last one, Lab Clinical, CBE. 10 of us just got back last week from a conference in Orlando, Florida. Yes, we did get a picture with Mickey. We were smiling. But competency-based education, I believe, is something that's coming. 2 years ago, there were 250 colleges and universities doing it. There's now over 500. And it's not only 4-year or 2-year colleges. And so we want to look at, especially those classes that have labs, how can a student, especially a student who's a non-traditional student who cannot attend your lab every day that you have it scheduled, use welding as an example. Maybe they can't come at 1 o'clock on Monday through Friday, but they can sure come at night, or they can come in the morning. Why isn't that lab available? And they have competencies they have to attain before they can complete that course. But if it takes them 2 weeks or if it takes them 15 weeks, that's up to the student. But we're going to explore that and do some pilots with that, but that team hasn't started yet since we just got back. What's last? So, impact to you. As I said, I think we're going to hopefully have a lot more professional opportunities for all of you in this regard. The other thing we're probably going to start to move, and I know when I look around, I see a lot of familiar faces. Some of you are very good about coming every year, and I appreciate that. But we have some folks that just don't seem to be able to show up. And then we usually run into a few issues. And so we're probably going to move more to a direction that if you're going to teach for us, you need to go through some professional development with us. So, other than that, since I don't want to be talking anymore, I'll talk more in the spring.
Yes, sir. All right. This time you're going to stand up for 2 minutes, starting now. at southeast.edu, and we'll get one taken care of for you. I'm the guy that sent out the email with all the stuff, so send first sort of thing. Oh man, I forgot his name. Lawyer chair, associate dean. Or if you came in on time and started eating and forgot to sign your pay agreement, send me an email, we'll get you taken care of. To value your time. And without further ado, we're going to talk about engaged learning. So sorry, without further ado, fearless leader of engaged learning. And one of our fearless leaders. How about this for tonight? All right, it's all yours, Linda. Thanks.
Okay, hello. I'm Linda Hartman. I'm Program Co-Chair for the Business Administration Program, and I've got a team of experts up here. We're going to do some engaged learning activities, and we're going to learn from each other. First of all, I'll do quick introductions. Tammy Lang, Program Chair from Field of Business in Milford. Terry Tiedemann, my co-chair of business here in Lincoln, and Nikki Brandmeier, the Associate Dean of Health. And we have our famous Jill Sand. If you don't know Jill Sand, Dean of Health, she is our ELE guru, expert, I don't know, whatever, just incredible word you want to use. She lives and breathes engaged learning, so we're all here because of Jill. So these gals are all going to help me make sure that everybody's staying on task. We've got some activities for you and just some ideas for you. So first of all, real quick, everybody stand if you did the homework for tonight. Did everyone read the email with your homework assignment? Stand up if you read the email from Bruce that talked about the meeting tonight. Yes, okay, well that's better. Okay, so one of the things we're going to talk about this evening is what to do when your students don't do the homework that you assigned to them. And I did tell you that you wouldn't have to turn anything in, right? So is that why you didn't do it? And you knew you weren't going to be held accountable? Right? Right, okay. So, well, we'll learn from each other because I know you've all had that experience before. So, all right, so first things first. Always like to start with an icebreaker, and especially the first day of class. So we'll talk about some different types of icebreakers. I recommend you do icebreakers the first day of class especially because everybody's nervous to be there and nobody knows anybody. And then throughout the quarter, you can do icebreakers just on a regular basis. You can do it every class period if you want. Just something really quick and easy. It might just be a question of the day. So some different things, random questions you can do. You know, what's your favorite make, model, color, car? What's your favorite outdoor temperature, paper or plastic? I mean, there's, you know, hundreds of questions. What's your favorite app? What's your favorite object in your home? Whatever. So if you want to do the same question for everybody that day, you can do that, or you can just mix it up too. So, so that's the random questions, the unique or similar in groups, things that said something unique about themselves or some things they have in common. Again, it's something interesting they can share about themselves. Phonetic table tense, that's an interesting one. I do it a lot of times where they actually have to draw out their name. They can't use more than 1 or 2 letters to draw their name. And you get some really interesting pieces of art. But it's kind of a fun way to do table tense if you like to do table tense for names. Bingo, there's lots of different versions of bingo you can find. 2 truths and a lie, I'm sure some of you have done that, right? The syllabus take a guess, I don't know if we have that resource anywhere, but there's just some fun questions of, you know, what do you think you'll learn based on the name of this class, what do you think you'll learn in this class? And just see what they come up with. What do you think are 2 important rules to remember in this class? What's the most important thing to remember? What's the name of your teacher? Those kinds of things that are kind of a fun syllabus take a guess. And what we're going to have you do now is to come up with some icebreakers at your table, some things that you've tried. If you're at a table by yourself, sorry, you gotta scoot to, you can't just have think time by yourself. So be at a table. If you want to do groups of maybe 3, there's maybe 6 of you at most of the tables. You all have some index cards and some post-it notes. You can use those however you want, but I'm going to give you about 2 or 3 minutes to just come up with a list of icebreakers, some additional icebreakers for your class, okay? Oh yes, and if you teach online, come up with some ways to do some online icebreakers, some things like Animoto or Flipgrid, Sway, some of those kinds of things if you do online classes.
Yeah.
give you 30 seconds maybe. Take our 3 minutes as well.
Some of the things are like, I don't want any of this.
Hey, who thinks that they have the very best icebreaker possible? Not you. Over here. So we got a prize. Here you go. So you have to tell us about it.
Okay,
Okay?
all right. No, I'm a teacher. I use my big teacher voice. Okay, so the activity that I was telling you about, I use usually with my 5th graders. And I call it the stupid activity. And so I start, and I set it up before they get there. I put a piece of paper on everybody's desk. And when they come in, after we've done all the normal, hi, I'm Dr. Riley, who are you thing, I will say, okay, take your pencil, write this word on your paper, and I write the word stupid on the board. And I have them write stupid on their paper. And then I take my trash can, and I set it on a desk, because that freaks out 5th graders. And I have all of the students stand up, make a line, so we practice lining up. They come up one at a time, they take the word stupid, they crumple it up in the ball, and they throw it in the trash can. And I explain to them, this is the trash can, it is not the recycle bin. This is a trash can. We have thrown this word away, it will not come back up in this classroom again. And then we usually talk about that a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily help them get to know each other, but it helps them get ready, because they're up and moving, and it sets the tone for the class of, you can't use that word. Whether it's a stupid question or that person, doesn't matter. It's gone. And so that's when I start all my 5th grade classes with that.
That's great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your teacher voice. All right, Terry Tiedemann does a lot of online teaching and a lot of our training with all of our online instructors as well. So she's got some handy ideas. Did someone come up with a really great online icebreaker that you use besides the general discussion? Tell us about yourself, why are you here, that sort of thing. I'll have Terry.
Okay, so I've been teaching online for a long time, and one of the things I learned just recently within the last year is a little app called Flipgrid. You can Google it, and what it allows you to do is it allows you to create like your own class. So you send a link to your students, and only they will be in this class, and it lets them record themselves for 90 seconds. And so then you post that, and so they actually get to see each other, and it's really, really easy to do. One of the things I learned the first time I did it, though, was one of my gals, she goes, oh wait, I gotta go put makeup on first. So then another one had her cat in her lap, and it was really fun. But the one thing I realized was I shouldn't force them to put themselves on video if they didn't want to. So I sort of changed it up a little bit, and I said, you have to do a video, you don't have to be in it. It has to be 90 seconds or less, and share something about yourself. And so that was kind of a cool one. And it's worked really well, students like it too.
Flipgrid is totally free. It's called Flipgrid, one word, right? Animoto is another one. Some of you may have used Animoto. There's a free 30-second version of Animoto. And again, they can just put pictures of the cat and the kids and whatever. It doesn't have to necessarily be them. But they love doing that one too. So online, you can do those same kind of icebreakers too. So, all right. Good job with the icebreakers. You guys passed the first test. So definitions of engaged learning. First of all, our engaged learning experience definition. This is college-wide teaching and learning process focused on engaging students in the application of knowledge and skills throughout interactive experiences. It's nothing new. I know everybody's been doing engaged learning. We're just calling it engaged learning now. So don't feel like you've got to reinvent the wheel or recreate the way you do your classes, but we'll talk about some of the things that make it really successful. Engaged learning, the definition is learning that is interactive, because again, students learn better when it's interactive, they retain more. It's learner focused, and it builds responsibility and critically thinking throughout the application of knowledge and skills. So on your tables, or what you got when you came in, on the little blue half sheet is the ELE framework. This is in our college catalog as well, so students will see this. It's on page like 47 of the college catalog. College-wide, this is our Engaged Learning Experience framework. So just be thinking, and this was your homework, to be thinking of what kinds of activities and things that you do in your classes for pre-class content, so students will come prepared to class after they've had some interaction with the materials to begin with. The pre-class assessment, and we'll talk about some different ways that you're doing that already, like a ticket to class, somehow where they can demonstrate some basic knowledge. And then the engaging classroom activities, that's the fun stuff that you get to do, engaging activities in class, breaking things up. We'll talk about lots of different ideas for that this evening. And then the post-assessment, again, we've got some tips for you on your tables. We'll talk about those in a little bit as well. And then 3 R's of review, redirect, or rehearse, okay? So you have those little handouts, those blue ones. So what we're gonna have you do now on your tables, we'll take quite a bit of time to do this, because we do want you to go through all 6 of the frameworks, or all 6 of the steps, and talk about the pre-class homework that you did. I know that you were mentally thinking about one of those things, some of those things. You might not have written anything down, but I know you were at least mentally thinking about being prepared to talk about this. So first, discuss what you do individually in your classrooms, what you do when students don't do their homework, like some of you didn't do tonight. So if they come to you unprepared, then what are some of the ideas that you use to hold them accountable? How do you set that standard from day one? And we'll get some feedback from you for that question in particular. And then second, discuss what you do in your classes face-to-face and online, because I know we have a variety at all the tables of online and classroom activities that you do for engagement. And then you also have the bright colored packet, everything that's attached to the ELE framework. So if you've done some of those activities, if they sound familiar and you've done some of those, I'll have you share with at your tables what you've done as well. So we're going to give you probably about 15 or 20 minutes, I think, to talk about these topics. First of all, what do you do when they didn't do their homework? And then how do you do some of those engaged? And if you want to do maybe groups again of 3 or 6, whatever works best for you. Any questions about any of that? Oh, who said they did their homework? Cheryl, for sure. Okay. You get, this one is a brain booster. So you can roll the dice, create a brochure or a paper. There's a discuss with your partner how you feel about it, all kinds of ideas. So you roll the dice. There you go. Okay. We have more prizes too, so be sure to speak up. Okay? So we'll give you, like I said, about 15, 20 minutes. Okay?
Well,
I've taken a lot of things
Just a few more seconds. I think you're kind of all winding down. Maybe another half a minute. Did you all have some great discussions? Everybody have some good ideas? How about one awesome idea for the crowd? Who's got it? Somebody new? Okay, pre-homework. For the pre-class homework. Who's got a great pre-class content? Because you all didn't do your homework.
Oh, we just need a break, so who wants to share? Okay.
Right over here. I love to be voluntold. And since we were voluntold, you get, this one actually is based on blooms. So there's different levels of blooms, and you can have students pick a word on there, whatever they roll the dice. Okay, so share.
I don't know that mine's that interesting, but I assign a lot of, I teach face-to-face, but I assign a lot of online read quizzes for my students because I find that if you don't attach some sort of motivation to doing reading, then you don't do it. Yeah. And the point is not to be difficult. Like, I don't try to be elusive or like really scary, questions or really small details, but just that if they did the reading and engagement, but on some level, it's just basically them saying, hey, I proved that I engaged in reading.
Okay, very good. And you want a
Right,
prize.
so good job. One of the things I like to do too is to think about, I know some of you said you get so frustrated when students don't read. So start with a list of things that you have as pet peeves in your classes. So things like that they don't read. So, and then be thinking of ways that you can help overcome those things. Is it just that they don't have time? Is it maybe they didn't know? Maybe they don't know how to do their homework properly? Maybe they don't set aside time. Some of those things that Teresa was talking about, find out what their barriers are and what maybe you can help them with some problem solving for time management, some of those kinds of things. So really start with a list of all the peeves, which is not always a fun thing to do, but it is kind of liberating, right? To start with a list of peeves and then some of the things that maybe you can help them be more proactive with. So pre-class assessment, I think some of you talked about a ticket to class. Maybe some of you use the 3-2-1. Maybe some of you just start with an index card. Anybody have something really cool that they want to share that they do there? Still have like 6 more prizes. Anybody? Really? Okay, somebody volunteered your neighbor. Where? Oh, I'm. Okay, so we're talking pre-class assessment or a ticket to class. Who's ready?
Have you ever done that in the classroom?
I do labs and clinicals.
Labs and clinicals.
Yes.
So they have to do something before they come to class, don't they?
They need to know their skills and watch the videos. There's a lot of labs. They have to come to class prepared, watching their videos, and if they don't watch the videos, they can't really do the skills. So then you can't do double dipping. So they can go watch the video in the classroom, but then that time is deducted from their classroom. So that everybody gets credit and they're all on.
That sparked something I remember. I teach at the university, but I also teach here, and so for our writing class, we have to do a lot of reading outside the class because we spend most of our time writing. And so we have certain chapters I have to read, and I always send them a little remind message or something in their whatever inbox is for Moodle, I can't remember. But saying, hey, you're going to be working in groups. Make sure that you are ready so that you aren't the only one that's not sharing in the chapter. And then I give them just a little bit of guidance of what maybe would be the talking points about the chapter, and that seems to help them rather than just saying we need to read this chapter in daily life, and then they come and they don't have it read, and it's just a big, huge mess. Okay, so I like the idea of the talking points. That's a great tip. All right, so we're going to talk about some more engaging classroom activities in a slide or two. Post-assessment, anybody do some really great post-assessment? After you've had your lecture, something besides a quiz or test, please.
I don't know if this really counts, but I teach economics online, and there is a site that I use for an online game, and the students have to, there's 4 of them that relate directly to the material for that week, and so they go online, and in one of them they control their own monopoly, in another one they're a competitive firm. They have to make all sorts of choices in the game, and they just basically play against computers, because it didn't really go really well when I experimented with everyone doing it together at once online. That did not work. But then they have to write up what moves they made, why they made them, if they feel like they're successful, and if they enjoyed the game or not. So that gives me instant feedback on if the student is really getting a benefit from it, and so far they all have said that they've really been able to feel like they got a hands-on experience. They didn't understand something when they did the quiz, and then they did the game, and they're like, oh, now I get it. That made a lot more sense when they kind of guided me through. So I've been using that a lot, and I think it's been pretty effective.
Have you ever done it in groups?
I did, and it was a fail. Mostly because they just didn't like waiting on each other, and everybody's schedules were so different. They just did not like the coordination. So
I like the idea of having them assess then, how did they, just to do some critical thinking afterwards, and
if you were
and what they liked and what they
To the
didn't.
higher level.
face to face, you could do it because you could actually do it. If you were in the classroom and everyone was sitting there, it would work. But getting them to log in at the same time, or even 20 minutes of each other, did not work.
You can see that. All right. We'll move on. Oh, did anyone, how about the activities in your packets that you've used? Does anybody use some of those? So, yes, so you said the 3-2-1. The 3-2-1, who has not used the 3-2-1? It is so good. 3 things you learned, or you can do any 3-2-1s you want, but 3 things you learned, 2 questions you still have, and 1 Money's point, or however you want to do that.
That's good for leaving and coming to class using 3-2-1 or during class. And that one works all different ways.
How about energizers? Everybody stand up. There you go. That's an energizer. anything like that. Try new groups, but just getting up and moving when the weather's nice. Is there a class maybe you could go outside? Nothing says you have to stay right there in the classroom, so if that works, maybe not the computer lab, but room setup. Don't be afraid to rearrange your room. How many of you are in a room in rows? I was snoring, I'm sorry. I kind of have a cringe when I walk into a room in rows. But you can sure have students turn around. You can move those tables and chairs, just move them back. If you're anybody in an engaged learning room, there's some in the D section, some in the T, some in, so if chairs are in pods or in the U shape, those work really well. You can sit back down. So again, don't be afraid to move tables and chairs. Don't you love round tables and pods of tables? I mean, it really does lend itself well to group discussions and interaction. So don't be afraid to do that. So we're going to talk about some more activities that you can do, ways to engage. Again, probably the worst thing you can do in a class is to sit and lecture for 2 straight hours. Could you have sat here and listened to one presentation for 2 hours with no break, no getting up, just listening to one person talk for 2 hours? You'd be bored out of your mind. Even the best engaging speakers can't do that. So we've talked about some of these, but just asking a question is a good way to break things up. And so, you know, even as long as you're doing that, and as long as you're getting different people to respond regularly, I've sat in on accounting classes that they do kind of a group around, so they'll do their reviews, and they just go around the room, and if somebody doesn't want to respond to one of the questions, they just say pass. And it just works really well, so just ask a question, or just do a review like that. Redirect, give a new subject, do some kind of review. Again, use the index cards. I have one instructor in economics, which isn't always the most riveting of subjects, but it is easy to get into a routine of lecture. So they just use index cards, and they have little interactive quizzes all throughout, about every 10 slides or so, instead of just lecturing. Video and movie clips, always a good idea, as long as you're not doing, you know, a 40-minute movie clip. So just, you know, 3 or 4 minutes of TED Talks.
There is no reason to show a 40-minute movie in a class. I'm sorry. You can assign that as homework. If you're going to spend 40 minutes showing a movie, you're not teaching.
So, and mind mapping, has anybody tried mind mapping? You like to, what kind of things do you mind map? Oh, elementary. So there are all kinds of things you can mind map. You get a prize for mind mapping because it's one of my favorites. That's bad. Sorry. All right, so think, pair, share. Some of you use think, pair, share, right? How do you use think, pair, share? Anybody?
I use it in one of my college classes. When the groups get too comfortable, I'll make them stand up, hand up, pair up, and when I'll let the music go for a little bit, and then when they stop and get into groups of 4, I make them number off, and then the ones have to sit at that table, 2 sits there, 3 sits there, and they have to work at least that class period because they get so comfortable in their groups.
Yeah. So think, pair, share, and you can pair them all kinds of different ways. Yep, perfect. The 1-minute paper. Who does 1-minute papers? You like 1-minute paper? Who likes a 1-minute paper? 1 minute is kind of a long time when you actually set a timer and do it. So you can do a 1-minute paper. Does anybody get the Faculty Focus newsletter? Faculty Focus just this last week had ideas for 1-minute paper, and they said you could do a 1-minute paper to clarify the muddiest point or the clearest point of the class. How I prepared for class today. Have them write for 1 minute at the beginning of class on their index card how I prepared for class today. Might be a really short minute for someone. But that's a good idea, right? And that could be their ticket to class. You would have to put their name on it and turn that in as attendance points. What I liked best that helped me learn, and what I wished had been discussed today. So those were some of the topics they mentioned in Faculty Focus for 1-minute paper. Say
When I'm teaching, I always tell my students, before you leave, please write on a card. What have you learned and what would you prefer the next time?
Okay.
That's at the end, not the beginning.
At the end, what have you learned and what do you hope to learn next time? Something along that line. And then they turn that in. Again, you can use that as attendance. Use that at the end of class, kind of as their ticket to class the next day. That helps you too. You read through those at the end of the night or at the end of before the next class period. So perfect. Stop, start, and continue. I just want to mention that one because Teresa had talked about getting student behavior to stop. I like to do stop, start, and continue maybe after the first week of class and have students just write down again on an index card. We go through a lot of index cards. These are the things I'd like you to stop doing, like not coming prepared, those kinds of things. These are the things I'd like you to start doing, and these are the things I'd like you to continue doing. Now, you can take it a step further and have students do that for you. So maybe they'd like you to start grading things in a more timely manner or some of the things like that. It also gives you an opportunity to talk about, maybe they expect something to be returned immediately for instant gratification. You can use that as a great opportunity to explain to them that maybe this isn't their only class and, things take time to grade and things like that. So, but you also don't want to get into the battle of who's got the best excuses for not getting their work done, right?
And that one will work great in the online class, especially after the first week or two when the students are still figuring out what the class is. You tell them what would help, but then they tell you back what they want.
So that's a great stop, start, and continue. I use it sometimes after the first week, especially if I'm getting really annoyed. And I've also used it at midterm and then even towards the end of the quarter too. So you can start doing some of those kinds of things. Muddiest point's another popular one. Look something up on their phone because they're using it anyway, right? Hopefully not. But you might want to look something up. Ask them a question. I was sitting in a class one day and a student said, what is our greatest export? What is the United States export? And the instructor said, I don't know. And it could have been an easy contest. First person that can tell me the answer to that wins a prize or gets 5 points or something. So you can use those kind of opportunities. And then they put them back down, right? Give an example, line up, there's all kinds of different ways, kind of like what we were talking about with they pair up and touch hands. So you can have them line up all kinds of different ways and then set up in groups based on that. So maybe you have them line up by birth date or maybe you hand out playing cards, those kinds of things. The ELE toolkit. Each division has ELE toolkits. Looks like this, looks like a toolkit, right? So the toolkits have all kinds, they have actually all of those blocks that we've been throwing out. They've got some cubes that you can write on. They've got Mr. Sketch that your students come out with a little spotted nose. There's no Mr. Sketches. They've got call bells. These are really fun too, just dry erase paddles, and there's maybe 6 of them in here. So they could do it in groups. You could have them draw something, draw the answer to something. You could have them hold up their cards. There are a plethora of A, B, C's, and D's, so everybody in class gets an A, B, C, D, or everybody in class gets a true false. There's laminated ones, there's just all kinds of goodies in here. And there's even a guide on how to use your toolkit. So each division has toolkits. I know Janine has a tool closet. A cabinet maybe more appropriate with all kinds of games and activities. So English department likes to use all those too. So any questions about any of that toolkit? We are also working on engaged activities for online classes. So all the activities that we gave you in that packet, we're coming up with versions of those. We meaning Jill and all the other brain trusts of ELE. So coming up with ways to incorporate all of those into online classes.
One of the things that one of our teachers uses is a get out of jail card, and I can't remember if she gives students 1 or 2, but it's something you would use when people don't do their homework, and they would get a chance to get away with it maybe one time, and so they would give you their get out of jail card, and you would mark it down, and you write their name on it. And it's real funny because the students, when I tried it myself, the students are very conscious that, oh wow, I can get away with it this time, but not next time.
And some of them will save that to the very end and then want to use it at the
And
very
then they
end.
can get something else with it. You can give them points if you want to, but just it's really fun.
All right, the last thing on your table, ideas for post-assessment. This test debrief was just shared with us recently, and I think it's there should be a copy for everyone. We did it in white, so if you want to make copies of this, feel free to make copies of it. It's a test debrief, and it's just for students to do some self-assessment on the test. The questions that they missed because they panicked, or they made a careless mistake, or they didn't follow the directions, so they decide, the questions that they missed, they kind of figure out why they missed those questions, and it's a great self-analysis for them. So make copies of that, use it for your tests. Do your own test analysis. Look at what are the most frequently missed questions. How many of you do that regularly? Look at what are the most frequently missed questions, and then hopefully you do some reteaching for yourself. How could I teach that lesson better so that they can improve? And I like the half my students have post-assessment stress disorder. That's totally appropriate. So more resources, ask your program chairs. That's one of the best resources that you'll have. The ELE toolkits available in the division offices. Ask your program chair. Hopefully they might know where they're at. We're working on getting a list of where they all are. You can also email Engage Learning at Southeast.edu. We have ELE coaches that can come and sit in on your classroom, and it doesn't have to be someone in your division. In fact, it's helpful if it's someone from some other area of the college that has a little bit different perspective. So if you want someone to come in and sit in on your class, or just maybe look at your PowerPoint and say, give me some ideas on what I can do to interact, to have a little more engaged learning in my classroom. Then there's free resources if you want to write down this website, oncourseworkshop.com/best practices. And you do have to sign up. You just put in your email address, and of course then you get on their email list, but they do have wonderful resources for OnCourse. But if you sign up on oncourse.com, oncourseworkshop.com/best practices / is there a hyphen or hyphen between best? I think it's just hyphen because it slipped on the line. So
Can you email us for you?
yes, we can email this. So who prizes left? Who's going to use one of these activities tomorrow? Something you did today. Right, of course you are. I'm gonna try. Oh, that's good. See, I'm getting better. Got one more. And who else is going to use it before winter? Something we learned tonight. Yeah. All right. I kind of wanted the bag. Poor Ingrid says that was totally awesome. Who wants the bag? Can I give away the bag, Joe? Can I give away the bag? Who's totally awesome at engaged learning? Self-proclaimed.
You are.
Who is?
You are.
Everybody's pointing at you in the blue. You? You? Yes, all right. You're the lucky one. Okay. Thank you, guys. Bruce? Send this out? Will we send out this, what, just a little thing, a whole shebang?
So yeah, if you're like frantically writing HTTP // we'll send you the stuff in an email, so we'll get that out to you. And also, we're going to have this recorded just in case you want to see it or bits and pieces again, because Chris will do his mastery in editing, and you can fast forward and do all that stuff. So that will come. But hey, we're on the stretch, so stand up for 1 minute. We're going away from Moodle, going to Canvas. And I tell you, I feel so much pressure after following engaged learning. I had like a 45-minute video. I figured, Jill, Linda, Terry, they all like, don't do it, Bruce. So hey, hold on. I think I can do it in a minute and a half.
This is the video where we're supposed to show you all the cool things Canvas can do. But it's actually more about the cool things you can do with the power from Canvas. With fewer clicks and steps, stuff like speed grader and drag and drop calendar will give you more time in the day. You can do what you have to in a way you actually want. The communication between teacher and learner is so critical, and with Canvas, it's on your terms. Students can receive notifications, submit work, and interact with learning materials on the devices they use in the ways they're used to. And Canvas's open platform lets you provide feedback and other interactions using video, blogs, wikis, or several other ways. You know the learning experience you want to create. Canvas is the perfect site. Bring the best of the web into your lessons with open integrations. Reinvent assessments with richer content. Easily tie outcomes to your grading, and then monitor it all with analytics. Teaching or learning is what you do. Helping you make it simple, smart, and transformative is what Canvas does. Give it a try. See what Canvas can do for you.
Okay, that concludes your training for Canvas, so I assume you're ready to roll. Not quite. But yeah, I got a minute and a half in there for you. Anyway, yes, we're moving to Canvas. Remember, Dr. Hedrick showed you the calendar, August 2019. We're at Canvas College. We're going through all the back-end stuff right now, and all the stuff that you don't want to worry about, like, enrolling students, that kind of thing, and the backbone, which is really, really important. And I want to give kudos to all our friends in IT and student services and financially. It takes a real team to put all this together. And so you're the beneficiary of all that work behind the scenes. But I think you'll see Canvas as a real asset to SCC. It's different from what we're used to in that Canvas, from one institution to the next is quite similar. Now we're going to set up our shells, and there'll be some required parts to make it easier for you to move things over. And there's going to be two schools of thought, I think. Some people say, you know what, Bruce, I just want to move my stuff over. We'll be able to do that. But in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, this might be an opportunity to look at your totally online, or your hybrid, or you just use it for your face-to-face class. It might be a great opportunity to examine, here's what I've been doing. Maybe I should change some, update it. A lot of people are going to start from scratch, and granted, use your ideas from what you had in Moodle and move it to Canvas, but it's just a great opportunity to look at. There's always a few people out there, probably a group of over 100, probably more than 1, 2, 10, 20, I don't know. The great thing about Canvas is you can go in and just play around, try it, do it. There's probably people in this room that have already been here. So as we're frantically writing down pages on how to get the stuff, go to canvaslms.com. That's what this is. Don't worry, I'll send it to you again, but it's canvaslms.com, and it's amazing what's there, and the tools and the resources. Now, our virtual learning team, which is basically made up of 5 or 6 or 7 instructional designers, they're putting together an online course to learn Canvas. The advantage is, people like me, I go into Canvas and they say, oh, I'd like to learn about these 300 things. It's a long, long list. What the virtual learning team has done, they're going to put that long, long list, kind of scrunch it down to the big stuff. So if you go into that, it's almost ready. I'm just telling you, it can save a lot of time. I know somebody's gonna go in here and go, my gosh, it's gonna take me hours and hours to go through it. Some people really like to do that. But I'm telling you, in the meantime, we're ready to get some information out, because somebody's out there going, man, I need some. As Dr. Hecker talked about professional development and training. Don't worry, it's coming. We're going to have some stuff available online. We're also going to provide some things face-to-face. Some people like the face-to-face time where you can do some question and answer kind of thing. So it's coming. So I want to put your mind at ease. We understand it's coming. But if you're the type of person who wants to go to canvaslms.com, you can just go in there and have all kinds of fun. Try Canvas free. Put your name in there. Put your name in there, Southeast Community College, and you can get in there and just start doing some stuff. If you just want to play around, don't worry, you're not going to screw anything up. You can go in there and play, start developing a class, but the more you get into it, you can start to think, oh, I can really use this. I really like this calendar feature. I really like how I can do an announcement. And the good news is, one of the advantages of Canvas is it's quite the same from institution to institution. Moodle is a wonderful product. It will serve us well, but one of the challenges you have in the philosophical open source is, you ask one institution, well, how do you use it in announcements and a calendar? Well, they could have a different platform that looks different than we have, whereas Canvas is basically Canvas is Canvas. So we'll be able to get best practices from other institutions. Plus, if we have any students from University of Nebraska that are doing current enrollment, they'll recognize Canvas. Another advantage of Canvas, once you get into it, right within each course shell, we'll have a tab that says support, help. Canvas provides 24/7 support. So in other words, you're sitting there on some weekend going, man, gosh, I need help. I don't quite understand how I can do this. All you have to do is click a tab, give them a phone call, send them an email. They'll provide you with some help as quickly as possible. And everything I've heard, their response rate is quick, it's quite well done, and you're going to be talking or visiting with somebody from Canvas. They are experts in it. They don't work with other LMSs. They're a Canvas employee. They know it backwards and forwards and sideways. So I see a lot of advantages. It's an exciting time. I told Dr. Hedrick, I said, well, since we're kind of changing a bunch of stuff, we might as well change LMSs. He goes, yeah, what the heck, you know, it's all right. But I think you'll find it in the end easier to use. Your students will find it easier to use, and away we go. So don't worry, I don't want anybody to leave tonight going, I just want to get in there and play. You can do it. I'll remind you and I'll send it out, not get in there and play around a little bit. But also, if you're thinking, now let's sit back and digest it a while, we'll have some face-to-face trainings coming up in the spring. Don't worry, it's coming way. And now, the home stretch. I think that's on. You want to use this?
Hello. Before we leave, we just wanted to give you an opportunity to see if you had any burning questions that you wanted to ask us. Could be anything. If we know the answer, we'll tell you. If we don't, we'll try to find it out. Or we might just ignore it.
I've got the mic, if that's okay, I'll kind of run around. This is the Chief Academic Officer going all the way to top here, so this is your chance to ask questions.
Some adjuncts have already been asking program chairs what the schedule is going to look like next fall for them. And I told them, I don't know.
Schedules is a good question. One of the things that we'll be putting together here shortly, because we have to have, obviously, for our catalogs are due December 1st. And so a part of that then is very shortly, we also have to have a schedule for the fall term. So programs will be working on that fall schedule as well. Now, the key question is, how many sections do we need? And hello. Anyway, I think that we might be surprised when we start the fall term with our marketing that we hope to do, that we may be having to add sections, hopefully. But right now, I think we're going to look at kind of tentatively what we typically do in a fall term, kind of plan from that direction, and then hopefully be available to add sections as needed. So, any other questions? Yes?
So the question at this table was, will adjuncts be able to teach more sections per term? Since now they're limited, at least in our division.
Okay, so the question from Janine was, will you be able to teach more sections? Which I think goes to the aspect that's associated with healthcare that was affiliated with how many hours you can teach. Again, I believe racking my brain here, but I think it's 29 hours a week is what you're limited to. But since classes will be stretched over a 16-week term, it's very possible that you could maybe teach more than what you're doing. Any other burning questions? Homework. Okay. Starting with fall, hopefully, if you're teaching this term, you already have in your CID how much homework your students should be doing as a part of that class to make them aware. And again, it's an awareness aspect. We aren't asking that you drill down and say, how much time did you spend in this? It's to give them an awareness so that they know how much time they should be spending to be prepared for your classes. And that is something that we're required to be doing. And so that's why we're doing it, but it is a guideline for the students. And hopefully, I know I've had one case where students have said, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to spend that much time. Which you just want to go, duh. That's why you're not doing very well. Anyway.
We were told full-time was fall, adjuncts were women.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So you got a quarter to get there. Full-time is fall, adjuncts winter. So, yes, thank you for that. This isn't working very good, Chris. Who's in charge of this?
Time to go.
Must be time to go. Okay. Oh, question over here.
I was just going to ask, are there still going to be like a 5-week sections,
Okay, so the question is, will there be shorter sections, timeframes within a semester? Typically what we're limiting it to is an 8-week, 16-week. When you get to summer, the summer term, we'll probably have a potential of a 10-week term, 2 5s or 3 3s. So there'll be some flexibility, but for the most part, typically it's 8 or 16. How about, before I let you go, how about you all help me in thanking Bruce and everybody who helped? Okay, we're going to let you go. Thank you all for coming. Good luck with this semester.